Hi, I'm Carrie.
And I'm Kayla, and you're listening to the Cheat Sheet Speech Podcast, where two pediatric speech-language pathologists talk about how you can build communication in your everyday routines.
Yes, before we dive in, just a quick reminder, this podcast is for educational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. If you have concerns about your child's communication, we recommend seeking an evaluation from a speech-language pathologist that is licensed in your state.
All right, Carrie, so what are we chatting about today?
Today we're talking about transitions. As speech-language pathologists, we're often supporting children transitioning to and from the clinic or different classes at school.
Yes, transitions are a huge part of the day in the life of a toddler. If we're thinking from playtime to mealtime, bath time to bedtime. And as you said, many parents come to us as speech-language pathologists because their toddler often demonstrates a communication breakdown during these transitions.
So why does leaving the playground always end in tears? Let's talk about what's really going on during these transitions and the evidence behind why they are so hard.
We often expect kids to just switch gears really quickly, but that's not always realistic. Transitions require cognitive flexibility, time awareness, emotional regulation, and language. And for kids who are just developing these skills, transitions can feel really overwhelming.
Yes, and if a child doesn't understand what's happening or what's coming next, that uncertainty can lead to frustration. This is where the key to reducing meltdowns comes in, and that is communication.
Exactly. A child may not understand why the transition needs to happen. So from their perspective, they might be thinking, this activity does not need to end, which can increase their frustration.
Yes, communication can play a key role in supporting a child across transitions. Often when a child is frustrated, that communication gets reduced. So how you communicate before, during, and after these transitions can help ease those transitions, right? So if we start from the beginning, how can we use communication to help support that transition before the transition even happens?
Right. So let's say maybe we're at the playground and we have to transition back to the car. What are your first thoughts?
Good example. I get this question a lot with my littles, that playground to the car is such a big transition, physically a big transition, and then we're leaving something fun as well, so it can be a very hard transition. My first thought would be a visual schedule.
Yeah, completely agree. Visuals are just a game changer. So this visual schedule, I'm thinking could be the day that you have on board. So it'd be going to the park, then car, throw an ice cream after that because why not? And you can go over this schedule before you go to the park.
Yes, visuals give that deeper access to vocabulary, and that allows the child to have stronger comprehension. They're now hearing that direction auditorily and seeing that direction visually. So that's just going to create a stronger network connection in their brain to deepen that vocabulary and increase that comprehension.
Right. We want to give them more ways to process the direction. So that's a really good point. Multiple ways of input. I also recommend just repeating that schedule as you get to the park as well.
Right.
Again, multiple opportunities to understand what's happening next.
Agreed. So you can make a smaller visual too with that current activity and then the one after. So more of a first then visual. That kind of reduces the amount of directions in that moment. So it just keeps that language very consistent and easier to digest and comprehend.
Right. You could do first we clean up, then we go outside, first put the toy in the sandbox, then to the car. It just gives them a sense of order and helps them understand this is what is happening next. I do think it's really important to note that you have to make sure that the next activity is actually next.
Yes, I see this happen at school all the time. Does this happen at school for you as well?
Yes, it happens all the time. I see teachers say, first clean up, then go to the playground. However, the next step is actually them having to line up at the door.
Right.
And it might seem a little minor, but like that can be a big change for our littles. They're not getting that immediate gratification.
Mm-hmm. Yes, being specific with your directions so that the child can follow along will just help support their autonomy during the situation. Like you said, if there's something in the middle, then they can feel more out of control, which is then when that frustration might kick in because they might not be able to communicate that their body feels out of control. So let's say you're at the park now and it's almost time to leave. You've already kind of gone over that schedule, but you're just about to get ready to leave to go back to the car. What could you do in that moment to help that transition go a little bit more smoothly? That's happening in about like 5 minutes, let's say.
Okay, so the transition to the car is about to come, happening in like 5 minutes, you said. Okay. I usually use a timer. They can be super helpful, especially if you're pairing it with language. Like when the timer goes off, we'll get in the car. Visual timer apps on your phone are great for this because they can see something that's going to happen on your phone when the time is up. That just gives more information about a sense of time.
Agreed. Yeah. And there's actually some really good visual timers on YouTube. So, but also if your child is kind of struggling with that concept of time, because we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but that concept of time can be hard to understand or, really get at this age of how much time is actually left. Try using a specific number of that activity rather than the time. So that could look like you have 2 more swings, then we're going to the car. You can climb up and go down the slide 3 more times, and then we're going to the car.
Yeah, that's perfect. I even use that for cleanup time, clean up 2 toys, and then we're going to leave or whatever it is next. It really quantifies that moment, makes it more manageable for them. I also suggest that like when you're ready to go, make the transition shorter or make it more of like an activity compared to being like a full task.
Interesting. Can you expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah. So like, let's say we do want them to go to the car. Instead of just going to the car, because that's like not as fun, you could do something like let's crab walk to the car. Or let's say that the car distance is kind of far. Maybe use some milestones along the way. So we're going to crab walk to the water fountain, and then we're going to hop to the car the rest of the way to the car.
I've had teachers at schools do that, especially if it's a longer transition. One of the schools I go to is more of a campus style, so it can be very long. But they will do run to the basketball hoop. Then when you get to that basketball hoop, you get the next direction, stop to the plants, and then walk to the door. So it breaks it up into chunks, which is more helpful for our children to, one, understand that direction, but just to help it seem a little bit shorter. We do that as adults as well. We kind of chunk our work if we have a lot of work to do, and that can make that task seem a little bit easier to tackle. One thing that I used to do in the clinics, I had like a PT, OT, speech clinic, ABA, and it was a small hallway, but a big transition, right? We're leaving that speech session. We're going to see a different therapist and different activities. And sometimes that might be a little bit harder. Maybe PT is harder for us. So I have these little circles. I use them for so many things, but they're little circle mats. And I would put them in the hallway, down the hallway to that PT session. And then I'm going to give them that choice of like, do you want to stop or hop? How do we want to get to the PT room? They feel a little bit more in charge, and they can make that transition down the hallway. And also then you can visualize that transition. Okay, I see about 5 squares. It seems a little bit easier to manage than this big walk down an empty hallway.
Yeah, that's a really important piece. Just like trying to really aid that that understanding of what you're communicating. So what is this transition going to look like? I also think having something in the car at that end destination, or let's say like at the OT room, we talked about before in our road trips episode, like having specific car toys is great, and it keeps things novel, it keeps it fun. What if we are doing this transition and your child is upset? How can we use language to support them?
Yeah. So, these are some tips to help that transition go more smoothly. And they're not promises that it will, because that transition isn't going to go smoothly. And that is totally okay, right? That, those transitions can be hard. We're learning. Transitions are hard for everybody. So that is okay if it does not go smoothly. But as we mentioned earlier, that language can often be reduced when we're frustrated. So this is a great time to help a child label their emotions and help build their vocabulary during these situations.
Yeah, just even saying, like, I see you're sad. It's okay to feel sad. It's hard to stop playing with something fun. All of those types of labels.
Validate their emotions so that they can feel seen, feel heard. They know that you're understanding them. During this time is also when I like to offer those two choices to just help them feel more in control. So as I was mentioning before with those circles, do you want to, hop or walk to PT, hop or walk back to the car? It will help them feel a little bit more in control when their body feels out of control.
Yeah, and helping aid that part too, trying to show that you're helping them navigate this transition by making it feel less overwhelming. So I'll start cleaning up with my child at the same time. And even if they're kind of upset, I still clean up and I just leave 2 items for them to clean up at the end. Because sometimes just seeing that splatter of toys can be the overwhelming part.
Yes, it feels like the next activity is so far away. So if it's just 2 pieces, then it feels a little bit closer. I've also found saying goodbye or goodnight to those toys helps that activity feel less like it's over and never coming back, and more that we're just taking a break from it, because in their head sometimes they don't know if that is going to be another choice again. They don't know if they're ever coming back to speech therapy again. So just this goodbye or good night, the toys are resting, can help them feel a little bit more in control of, oh, we're taking a break from this. I probably will see this again.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Like, they don't know or feel like they have control over when it's going to happen next. Also, if we're thinking about kind of like we have in speech therapy for all our speech therapists out there, having that next activity be visible for them.
Right.
This goes within the home too. If, let's say, you're cleaning up and dinner is next, a lot of times I would put the plate out so that it's ready for them at the table, so then they're not like sitting waiting for the meal as well. And it just gets them excited about what's going to happen next, again, because they can visualize it. It feels tangible. It actually feels next.
I love that. So what are our main takeaways for using communication across transitions?
Yeah, to kind of wrap up a little bit of this chatter, first we want to use very clear, consistent language. So that's going to help with the words across the transition become more routine for them, and then eventually more easier to comprehend. Number 2, communication. It isn't just talking. Communication can include visuals, signs, gestures, all to support stronger understanding. And that's what we want to do, help them understand this transition. Visual schedules are great.
Yes.
Number 3, I would say provide verbal or visual reminders as you get closer to that transition, multiple opportunities for the child to hear and understand the transition will just support their success across it. Number 4, offer choices. We love to offer choices. It just helps the child build their vocabulary and their autonomy during that transition. And then number 5, I would say just validate their emotions, describe how they're feeling, how you might feel, to model that communication so that they could use it when they're frustrated for the next time.
Amazing takeaways. If you have any questions about how to support your child across a transition, please drop them in the comments, or you can schedule an educational consultation just to discuss more tips on how to increase that communication and decrease that frustration across those transitions at home.
Yes, that's a good point. We provide one-on-one educational consults on how to support language across your everyday environment. We will not provide medical advice or a speech language diagnosis. However, we provide educational tips on how to promote and integrate communication in your everyday routines. Let's jump to our speech spotlight.
Amazing. So on today's speech spotlight, we're going to talk about the connection between regulation and communication.
Okay, so first, when we say regulation, what does that mean?
Yeah, good question. So regulation may not always mean calm. I feel like that's a common misconception there. So regulation means that a person is aware of themselves, their feelings, and their surroundings. Your body is not in this hyper aroused fight or flight state. You know where your body is in that moment in time.
Yeah, we might feel heightened emotions, but we're regulated if we are aware that these emotions are occurring. We're still connected to our body and have control over our body.
Yes, a person or a child may become dysregulated when they're frustrated about something, as we had previously mentioned, like leaving the playground, and they just don't feel in control over their body. They might feel upset and this urge to like push out that anger. They might just like not understand those emotions that they're feeling or just how to control them. Like, I feel really mad and I don't really know what to do.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with those feelings. And learning how to regulate our bodies is an important skill. Many adults don't even have these skills sometimes. You could think about it like being on a roller coaster. Our body just like does not feel at ease in space.
Yes, I use that example all the time with parents and families. I'm sure you've heard this advice, like just go for a run if you're feeling angry, or like take a long shower when you're feeling anxious, if you have a lot of thoughts in your head. Those are tips that are made to regulate your body, right? So it's the same thing for kids. They're just learning, first of all, what it feels to be regulated or dysregulated. They're not recognizing that that's like two different feelings. And then also those strategies to regulate us when we're feeling dysregulated.
Yeah, and that's an important part. We have to emphasize that we all have times of dysregulation, and that is okay too. We don't always have to be regulated.
So why does it never work when you say use your words to your child when they're upset? How does regulation impact communication?
So according to the research, Porges' polyvagal theory says that our physiological state influences our ability to engage socially. So when we feel safe and regulated, we can connect and communicate. But when we don't, our brain prioritizes survival, not the social interaction.
So what you're saying is, in that state of feeling out of control, forces our body to focus on the essentials to keep us alive. So those extra functions, say communication, that aren't vital to our survival then become reduced.
Right. So what should we say instead of use your words?
So I always recommend clear and concise language, like we had mentioned during that like transitions chatter earlier, language that's easier to process during a time that we might be dysregulated. Not all these words is just way too much.
Right. So I'm thinking maybe labeling what they're feeling at that moment. I'm mad. My tummy hurts.
Yes, I like that, because then you're modeling like that communication through that moment of dysregulation, giving them those tools of, okay, this is maybe what I could say during this time or the next time that I'm feeling dysregulated. When we also can kind of look at this the other way. So now we're kind of seeing that communication is reduced when we're dysregulated. But when we are regulated, that's also a great time to build on that communication. A 2020 study by Perry et al. Found that regulated states actually predict higher levels of expressive language use in toddlers with developmental delays.
I see that a lot in the clinic. I've had many children start communicating when they're like in a swing or doing some sort of movement-based regulation type activity.
Yeah, in my clinic, we would try to schedule OT purposefully or occupational therapy before those speech sessions so that then they would have this time to regulate their bodies so that their body was ready to build that communication and just open to receive that extra functioning of building their, language during that moment. So with this information, I guess, about how dysregulation can reduce our communication and then how regulation can help boost our communication, how can that help our parents and caregivers out there?
I love that question. I think the most important piece is understanding and recognizing dysregulation. So dysregulation, it can often be confused or like masked as a behavior. So it's important to recognize that dysregulation.
What are some signs of dysregulation?
Signs could be like a quick shift in mood, maybe like throwing objects, hitting, covering their ears, avoidance of something, a change in appetite, inconsistent sleep patterns too, could be all signs of those dysregulation.
You may also see a child looking to physically ground themselves. So that might look like laying on the ground or finding a tighter space, maybe a tunnel or a tighter corner.
Yes, yeah. Those are all signs of how maybe a child might try to attempt regulation too. Throwing objects, they might actually be seeking input from throwing something heavy to help regulate themselves. So if you see a child either in your classroom or at home and they're dysregulated, the next step is we have to figure out why they are dysregulated.
Right. Are they consistently dysregulated during transitions, or are they consistently dysregulated in a specific class? Maybe it's music class.
Yeah, maybe the music's too loud and you could turn it down, or you could give them headphones to help them regulate their body. If we can figure out and work on reducing that dysregulation by preparing them for that moment that might dysregulate them, like changing the environment or implementing some regulation strategies during that moment, that's going to be super helpful. Today's communication countdown is our top 5 toys for regulation and transitions. So Carrie, give us our top 5.
Awesome. Yes. So the first one I have is that peanut ball. You might see OTs walking around with this if your child goes to a daycare, and it is exactly what it sounds like, a ball shaped like a peanut. I love these because the child can sit on top of it and they could bounce, but they can also lay on the floor and you can take that peanut ball and just roll it across their body and provide that deep pressure that a child might be seeking in this time of dysregulation. Number 2 is a lava lamp. These are great because they're easy to bring on the go and they really support regulation as well. You could use them on a crash pad. You could use them in the car. They're just entertaining and provide that sensory input that a child might be looking for in a time that they're dysregulated. Number 3, I have a swing. I linked an indoor swing. Swings are great for promoting regulation, so had to put that on the list. And then number 4 is those emotion plush toys. I know we've talked about them. I think it was in our daycare. Our daycare podcast. And those are great for validating emotions. As we talked about, emotions are hard for children to conceptualize. So this helps them physically see those emotions. And also then you can promote maybe 2 of the emotions during this time a child's feeling dysregulated. So it's basically a visual at this point. And so they could point to angry or pick up sad. And I've had children too who will run over to the emotion plush toys and just grab the one that they're feeling. So it gives them another modality to communicate their emotions instead of relying on maybe that speaking. They can use that visual to communicate what they're feeling in this moment.
Those are great. I love those.
Yeah. And then number 5, we linked a visual timer. This is like a little hatch timer. So it's an egg and it kind of slowly crackles as it opens. And then there is a big reveal of what animal it's going to be at the end. Visual timers are just great for kids to start understanding that concept of time and just make it a little bit more fun and entertaining.
Love that. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today for our Cheat Sheet Speech podcast. Like, subscribe, tell your friends. Let us know if there's anything else you would like us to chat about. We're helping you bring communication to your everyday routines.
Awesome. See you next time.
Bye.